I had an entire program produced, and then I see the news of Bryce Young's fifth-year option. Dan Graziano of ESPN reports the Panthers could be strongly considering, in fact, they're expected to extend Bryce Young using the fifth-year option. I wanted to talk about Dave Canales' Coach of the Year efforts. I wanted to tell you why I think Canales should more strongly be considered for the award. And I wanted to specifically call out that it is bullcrap that Brian Schottenheimer, according to odds makers, is higher in the rankings than Coach Canales. So do they have pictures of the odds makers in Cowboys cheerleader attire on Jerry Jones Island? Is that what's going on with the odds makers? We'll talk about that, but let's talk about the news of the day. A lot of people are giving crap to Graziano for this, calling it a BS report, calling it a take. They call it a take. It's like, no, this isn't this guy reporting this. This is just a take. It's like the tone. He opens the mic and they're strongly considering extending Bryce Young with the fifth-year option. They're going to extend it to him. They're expected to do it, and he's just saying it. It's intuition. Now, the tone informs himself, but the tone isn't talking to people at Panthers.com. Graziano said he was. Graziano said he was covering the Panthers extensively this past weekend and asked a bunch of their people. So Graziano was talking to their people, and they're telling him this. We're thinking of giving Bryce Young the fifth-year option. Which I find strange because Graziano 2 months ago, October 8th, this is Graziano, the report that I mentioned on this program back in October. Hopefully you remember it. The Panthers so far are standing by quarterback Bryce Young, who recovered from a rough start Sunday and brought Carolina back to beat Miami. That Dolphins comeback win. Bryce Young had an impressive second half. Graziano goes on, there are people around the league who are watching that situation to see whether Young, who hasn't maintained the momentum that he finished with last season, could get benched for Andy Dalton if he doesn't show improvement soon. Young is 27th in QBR, completing 60.9% of his passes, 7 touchdowns and 4 interceptions. Graziano writes, the Panthers will have a fifth-year option decision to make in May, and it's possible they could be in the market for a new quarterback next offseason. So Graziano goes from telling you the Panthers might bench Young in October, that the people he talks to, and I know people are saying it's his take. I think Graziano is informed. He's talking to Panthers people. He's behind enemy lines. He's going to the other country, which is Panthers.com, where Mike Jackson does contrast therapy. So Graziano is in the sauna. He's the weird guy in the sauna with Panthers.com asking them about the quarterback. The guy that gets a little bit too close to you in the sauna. Sitting there asking you questions like, what's for dinner tonight? You know, you're 7 inches from me in a sauna. I don't know what you're trying to ask me here. Maybe if we could exchange phone numbers, you could send me that recipe. Again, we're less than a foot apart in a sauna. You probably shouldn't be asking those questions, Dan. Well, Dan does stand in the sauna. He does go where it's hot, where conversations are happening on Panthers.com about the future of their quarterback. And you know what I think about this? Because I think Graziano is hitting the nail on the head. I think he's right back in October when people around the league were watching that situation and thinking potentially maybe that the Panthers were thinking long-term about being in the market for a QB next offseason. It's not working well right now with Young. We're going to move on. That's what Graziano says back in October. An informed intel in, I believe, the weekly article he writes on ESPN.com. He comes back December 3rd. Graziano goes on. I expect them, talking about the fifth-year option, to do that because the cost will be reasonable, around $26.5 million. But then the question becomes what to do after that. I think Graziano knows. And you know why these reports kind of juxtapose each other. They're different. He's talking about them benching the quarterback, then he's talking about them giving him the fifth-year option. They could move on from the quarterback, blah, 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 blah. It's all just the same thing. It's this situationship. I got that term from some woman I met from Florida. And she goes, Tone, I listen to you to fall asleep every night. She goes, you're not the Tone, you're melatonin. I fall asleep to the Tone. I know more about the Panthers than anyone, but Tone, I can't stay around you because I'm in a situationship, is what she says. That means I'm with another man. I love him sometimes, but I also hate him at other times. And it's like this non-committed thing. I guess it's what these people do these days. The Panthers are in a situationship with the quarterback. Sometimes they love him. Sometimes it's, let's give him a lot of money. Sometimes it's Netflix and chill with the quarterback. Other times, let's look at the mortgage and how we can split this with the quarterback. And I think generally those are the conversations they're having internally. It's a situationship. As the girl from, I'm not even kidding, she's from Boca Raton. She explained this to me. Boca Raton. She talked to the Tone. She no longer talks to the Tone. She goes, Tone, I can't keep talking to you. I'm in a situationship. I love him sometimes. I hate him other times. I go, you must be in a relationship with the Panthers quarterback. And then she exited the conversation. They're in a situationship. The Panthers are in a situationship with the quarterback. And this is why Graziano's reporting is different. In October, it's let's move on. We're in the market for a new quarterback. Young is struggling. A few weeks later, we're giving him the fifth-year option. And honestly, I think it's the right decision, the fifth-year option. And I've been critical of Young. And you know what I'm using the bye week for? I'm using the bye week to detach. I'm using the bye week to go on a trip. I'm using the bye week. I'm going to go to the gym after this. I'm going to work out. I'm going to go in the sauna and not talk to people. I'm going to maybe go on a vacation, get an Airbnb, travel. I'm going to go see the world. And you know who also did that? Aaron Rodgers. Aaron Rodgers takes a trip every offseason. And that is the type of quarterback the Panthers will have access to this offseason. And it's not just a joke. It's serious. Like the Raiders, the Browns, they need quarterbacks. They're going to be at the top of the draft. So Mendoza, he looks like the guy. I know it's early. He looks like the guy coming out of Indiana. He's a beast. Looks like the Browns might even trade up with a team like Tennessee to get him. The Raiders, they want a quarterback. So Dante Moore, who's this stud at Oregon, he's 20. He might not even come out. But if he does, even though he's raw, he only has 20 career starts. Even if he does come out, he's probably going to be a top pick. A team like the Raiders, who knows? The Raiders are a disaster. They're a freaking disaster. I could go 20 minutes about them. But they're going to be in the market for a quarterback. So are the Panthers going to do what they did in 2023 and trade everything, trade the house, put it all on red? And draft Dante Moore or draft Mendoza? Like, I don't find that reasonable. I don't think that's going to happen. I don't think Dan Morgan would want to do that. You look at what Fitterer did, and I know Tepper had his hands in that, but it's the same thing. Whether it's Tepper not wanting to make that type of decision ever again, he sees the backlash of it, or it's Morgan saying, maybe I have the keys to this car and Tepper's letting me drive this thing and it's all hands off from the owner. Am I going to go and make a decision like that? Are you kidding me? So they're not going to be getting one of these top talents. Maybe there's a guy like Ty Simpson or another quarterback that's there. But then if Moore doesn't declare, Simpson's stock's going to rise. Whoever the other guy besides Mendoza is, his stock's going to rise. It's going to be tough to find a great quarterback where the Panthers are drafting. So then you talk about free agency. Well, Daniel Jones, he could be a free agent. Now it's reported, this is, I believe, Jeremy Fowler of ESPN. Jones has a chance to become the biggest earner in the free agency class. But the Colts appear all in on keeping Jones long-term. And they have comps for former top 10 picks who have thrived with new teams like Baker Mayfield and Sam Darnold, who each year earned 3-year, $100 million contracts. So Jones could be a guy, but he's probably going to stay in Indy. To which, would you rather another year of Bryce Young on the fifth-year option and whatever else they can do, which I think's a lot, or would you rather have Daniel Jones? And it's the chance of Daniel Jones. You probably aren't even going to get a bid at this guy. And then the other free agents in 2026, Aaron Rodgers. You want him? Russell Wilson, Mariota, Zach Wilson, Tyrod Taylor, Joe Flacco, Kenny Pickett, Jimmy Garoppolo, Mitchell Trubisky, Case Keenum, Trey Lance, Josh Johnson. Josh Johnson's still around. Brandon Allen, Malik Willis. I know a lot of people are talking about him. And that's such a great jumping off point. I would love a guy like Malik Willis. I would love a guy like Malik Willis and Young. Or Young and a second-round pick. And if one of those guys beats out Young in 2026, good. You have a quarterback. They're like Graziano reported all the way back in October, they could be in the market for a new quarterback this offseason. Yes. Graziano, the exact quote for you. It's possible they could be in the market for a new QB next offseason. Keyword possible. Keyword possible. Well, now Dan Morgan, he's read a couple draft magazines. He does a lot more than that, obviously. He's hearing from the scouts. He's hearing from his guys. He looks at the free agent class. He sees what Indianapolis is doing with Jones, and he goes, you know what? We aren't going to have a better option. We're not going to have we're not going to be the Patriots in 2024 where they had Mac Jones. And Jones is sitting there, and you draft Drake May, so you naturally move on from Jones, even though Jones made the playoffs as a rookie. And Jones had some impressive tape, but you cut bait with him because you have Drake May. The Panthers aren't going to be in that predicament. They're not going to be in the predicament where there's going to be an obvious upgrade over Young. And it's looking more and more like that. And that's why Graziano is reporting this. It's not his take. It's him reporting. It's him talking to the Panthers people. I expect them to do that. I expect them to pick up his fifth-year option for 2027. The cost will be reasonable. So maybe they're already thinking of the cost. I don't know. Maybe talk about that more tomorrow. But then the main question becomes what to do after that. Well, let's hear from Dan Morgan. We're 12 minutes in. I should have played this earlier. Here's Dan Morgan back in July before training camp talking about the Panthers quarterback and his progress so far in 2024, the whole 9 yards, his confidence level in the Panthers quarterback. Here's the Panthers GM back again in July of 2025.
Bryce, though, have you seen anything different about him this year on the field, the way he carries himself? Do you have more confidence in him now than you did a year ago?
No, I wouldn't say that I have more confidence now than I did last year. I see somebody out there who's having fun. He's really developing into a leader of our team. I think you're going to continue to see him grow as he creates, he creates chemistry with his wideouts. He continues to do that. And he's, I think he's going to potentially take a next step the more he masters this offense and all the little details that Coach Canales wants him to do. So he's doing all the right things. The passion for the game is evident every single day that he's out there. So, not just him, but everybody. So that's what gets me excited in general.
So Morgan with a couple telling quotes there. And that was the whole press conference where I was critical of Morgan because he came out in it and didn't even say winning was a goal. So back in July, flash back 13 games ago, the Panthers GM is saying that winning wasn't even a main goal. It was develop the young core. And I think a large way of saying, let's see what we have with this roster. Let's see what we can do. Let's put the boat in the water. You fix it up and put it in. Let's see if it sinks or swims. But the key words there, I wouldn't say I have more confidence this year talking about going into 2025 than I did last year. I cut it out, but he also said we're not thinking of the past. We didn't use 2024 as a barometer to draft T-Mac or make decisions. Keywords, Young is developing into a leader. That's what Dan Morgan says. And then finishes it with, he'll continue to take the next step. So are we really in that much of a different position? And Morgan refused to talk about Young's future in terms of contract and kind of pushed it into the future back in the offseason. But has much changed in terms of that? Like, he's a leader. I think he's got a lot of buy-in from guys. I think he's a well-liked player on the team, Young. I think that's pretty obvious. I think the defense at times might get frustrated because they force turnovers, they keep you in games, and some of the time the offense is holding you back. The offense is holding you back while the defense is keeping you afloat. So there could be some frustration with the overall performance, but generally he'll continue to take the next step. And I think the Panthers probably don't have a problem waiting on that to happen, even if it entails them giving Young $26.5 million, the fifth-year option, in 2027. Another interesting point that I should cover a lot more tomorrow, too, is the trade value for Young. Because we're talking about the option for 2027. So what happens if you get to the end of 2026 in the future and you don't want Young? Well, the Panthers were in a similar predicament back when they traded for Sam Darnold. Darnold came from the Jets. I believe the Panthers exercised the fifth-year option. Either the Jets did or the Panthers did. They traded for the rights to Sam Darnold, which is sort of a odd way to put it, but that's technically what happened, and then they had him for the fifth-year option. So there could be potential value for Young, even if they give him the option. It doesn't mean they're stuck with him long term. Let's talk about this. Finally, we're 18. Oh my gosh, this is 18 minutes on that. I came out hot in that one. I did. Normally I have to take a little glass of water here, and it's in a wine glass. I don't know why I do that. And I like to hydrate because it's a lot of speaking, and I don't want my vocal folds to get dry. And they didn't. I'm telling you, like God or something came over me in that segment, because that was a lot to talk about. I researched that for hours, like literally just full overdrive. And I was like, I need to get it out. It's like when you study for a test and then you got to get it all out right away. That's pretty much what happened. So hopefully I did pretty good. I know a couple people in the comments might not want to hear about Young being the long-term solution, but I'm interested to hear what people think. Like, honestly, I broke it down for you. A lot of you give me great insights all the time in terms of like other angles that you could take with these stories. So let me know. Fifth-year option for Young. What do you think? I will definitely be reading those. Let's talk about Coach of the Year awards. Mike Vrabel leads the pack. It's going to continue to be that way. Unfortunately, it's an award that is meant for people who get wins, i.e., if you're 11-2, nothing else matters. Honestly, I don't want to crap on the award completely, but like sometimes it feels as if it's just like 11-2, stamp of approval. And BetMGM sets the odds. Mike Vrabel with minus 235 odds to win the award. And Canales is plus 250. He currently ranks 7th. Behind Liam Cohn, Shane Steichen, Brian Schottenheimer, Mike McDonald, Ben Johnson, and Mike Vrabel. Minute on Vrabel. The award is influenced by wins. Do I think Mike Vrabel has made the biggest impact out of all those coaches? Personally, no. And I watch a lot of the Patriots, and I love the Patriots. I think Vrabel has those guys tackling. I think Vrabel has cleaned up the defense, but the defense has been inconsistent too. Who do I give credit to? Drake effing May. Drake May is I think is he odds leading for MVP? If not, he should be. He is nasty. He makes throws every game that 2, 3, 4 maybe quarterbacks in football can make. Every single game. That one that he dropped to Kyle Williams against the Giants was freaking insane. And I know a lot of people, Panthers beat that we talk about is Dave Canales' play calling versus Bryce Young's performance. Josh McDaniels has won a number of Super Bowls. He really hasn't made it work. He did make it work with Tim Tebow, didn't he? But besides that, he hasn't really been able to make it work aside from Drake May and Tom Brady. So, aside from a year of Tebow, he got a little bit of something out of Tebow, I believe. But generally, and I use that example because when Drake May is throwing a streak to Kyle Williams in the corner of the end zone, and it's less than a foot of a throwing, less than a foot of space to fit the ball in, he puts it in there. He makes it work. It's always a beautiful throw. So does it matter that Canales is calling this deep crosser to T-Mac to get T-Mac wide open when covered by Emmanuel Forbes against the Rams? Would that route matter if you have a quarterback like Drake May who just consistently makes the throw? And I'm not undermining the role of the OC with scheme and game plan and play calling and knowing the game and the intuition, having a feel and knowing what the defense is doing. I think that deep crosser route combination, that play Canales called was perfect timing. You caught them off guard. You caught the safety and that single high set off guard. But when you have a quarterback like May, who is just, it doesn't matter what McDaniels calls, it's a freaking insane throw. I don't believe he takes a lot of sacks. I think he did as a rookie. But he can move well. He moves the chains. Doesn't matter that the coverage is good. He puts the ball in there. And I think Vrabel, in short, is the beneficiary of exactly that. He has an MVP, elite quarterback. And really the only other guy on this list, if you go upward from Canales, in other words, the guys that have greater odds to win the Coach of the Year award at this point in time this article came out December 3rd, Ben Johnson, Mike McDonald, Schottenheimer, Shane Steichen, Cohen, Canales, and Vrabel. Vrabel, it's not even close. Sam Darnold, I guess he's been really good, but Drake May is by and far a million times over better than every other quarterback on that list. And Dak has been really good too, but Schottenheimer is ahead of Canales. But needless to say, Trevor Lawrence, Daniel Jones, Caleb Williams, Bryce Young, none of these guys are even close to Drake May, which I think is a bias in the award, which is why we'll need to do our own award. You don't like it. It's like that scene in SpongeBob. They move the whole city over the edge. We're going to take the whole city and move it over here. We're going to take the entire Coach of the Year award and do it on Panthers Twitter. And the reason I want to talk about this, because I think this is a very interesting beat or angle, which is Ben Johnson versus Dave Canales. So Johnson currently second in Coach of the Year odds, behind Vrabel significantly, plus 250 odds compared to Vrabel's minus 235, compared to Canales, who's plus 2,500. Why do I bring up Ben Johnson? Because I think the more you read about the Bears, the more you look at that team, they're very similar to the Panthers. I think they have won in weird, just peculiar ways. I think the Bears could be 3 or 4 wins worse, honestly. The Bears have only scored 6 points more than their opponents. 6 of the wins were by less than a touchdown, and they needed some late game good fortune to defeat the Raiders, Commanders, Bengals, and Giants. They also are dominating in the turnover department. 26 turnovers compared to the next best in the league, which is the Steelers with 22. Why am I telling you all these numbers? Don't they kind of remind you of the Panthers? Now, defensively and how they play is a lot different. It is so different in terms of how they're winning these games and also just generally how they play. How Ben Johnson play calls compared to Canales, it's different. But I tell you this because the Panthers are winning. Largely, they're in this. They're 7-6 because of a stellar defense that turns the ball over in recent weeks, but also the bend don't break model that has contained these teams, that has allowed you to be in these games, that has even stunted some stellar offenses like the Packers. Yes, the weather was pretty bad in that game. But needless to say, the Bears, the Panthers, both surprising teams. And both coaches are criticized. Why? Because they're quarterback whisperers. Bryce Young compared to Caleb Williams. Both of these guys haven't been where I think ownership wants them to be. Where in an ideal world, you're in the office, it's a round table, it's July of 2025, Bears, Panthers, you have the coaching staffs, you have the owner, they bring sandwiches, those like small little cut sandwiches that are always too small, and you're just sitting there after you eat one. You don't want to eat 2 or 3 because you might get judged, but you really need to eat 2 or 3 because they're small. They're sitting there discussing the team, and there's a flow chart and a graph with the quarterback. Both Young and Williams, to this point in the season, Young's been inconsistent. Young's had some turnover troubles earlier in the season. The yards, the throwing down the field, the vertical passing game, it is sometimes there like it was in the second half against the Rams, but largely hasn't been there. Caleb Williams, a little bit different of a dynamic, but the numbers statistically, he's not the reason they're winning. Ben Johnson literally said, we're winning in spite of our passing game, much like the Panthers. We're winning in spite of our passing game. Johnson's a lot more blunt. He just gives you how it is. Canales would dance around that for 20 minutes. But that's what Ben Johnson says. And none of us are pleased right now. That's what Ben Johnson says of Caleb Williams and the Bears passing game. And I mention this because I think what the award should take into account is unequivocally what the coach does with the quarterback and how much juice the coach squeezes out of the quarterback. Well, The Athletic goes on. I didn't take the freaking writer's name down. I'm sorry about that. But Ben Johnson, has Williams' long-term growth in mind. If Ben Johnson wanted to maximize second-year quarterback Caleb Williams' production in the short term, he could lean into college concepts, as so many play callers are loaded for doing. Instead, Johnson has cut the Bears' percentage of run-pass options into the low single digits while ramping up play action and pre-snap motion. It's all a long way of saying they know what's best for Caleb Williams now, statistically, performance-wise, but they're kind of keeping him away from that because they have this objective of developing him long-term. In other words, we're not going to let you do that run-pass option crap you did in college. We're going to make you develop right now. We're going to make you stay in these situations where you can't hold on to the ball, where you have to make decisions, where you might have to take a sack or throw the ball away. You might have to take a sack to avoid a turnover or throw the ball away before you get sacked. He got sacked 54 times or 22 sacks on 78 plays in 2024, where he held the ball for longer than 3.5 seconds. Get the ball out quick. Don't take sacks, Williams. And he has that growth trajectory on top of be a good quarterback, be a winning quarterback now. To which I say, do you feel the Panthers have the same vibe with Bryce Young? Because Coach of the Year ultimately comes down to wins. The Bears sit atop at the NFC today. But wouldn't you think in an ideal world, you'd take into account how good, how great the coach is at developing the quarterback? And I don't know. I mean, you're winning with Bryce Young. 11-10 in the past 21 games. 4,217 passing yards for Young. Total TD to interception, 37-13. Notice how they cut out the fumbles. I don't know why they did that. Now, this is from the Up and Adams show. And game-winning drives, 9. So, you bunch these numbers together. I guess it looks like Young is getting better statistically. How much has Canales squeezed out of Young because that does matter in the context of Coach of the Year. And you'll never hear about it. Mike Vrabel will get Drake May and still win the award. But take the win-losses aside. How much is your coach pushing your quarterback? How much is your coach getting out of the quarterback? This is the tone. Thank you so much for tuning in. I have to talk about a lot of this again tomorrow because it's just so strong, so robust, so much going on. This is the tone. Thank you so much for tuning in. We have so much more coming for you